Resident Evil 4, a cult classic in many households. This game is hailed as one of the greatest and definitely one of the best survival horrors ever. Now it's no secret, Resident Evil kind of fell off after Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 5 was mediocre.
I mean, it's alright,
and it tried to recapture that sort of survival horror aspect of Resident Evil 4, but it just fell a bit flat. Resident Evil started to become an action game, and it just didn't work. And then we have the dumpster fire that was Resident Evil 6. And then on 24th of March 2023, Capcom announced Resident Evil 4 Remake. Now, I did buy the game when it first launched, but I never finished it. So today, I'm beating Resident Evil 4 Remake, of course. So being the absolute Chad I am, of course, we went for the hardest difficulty straight away. After a brief introduction and some flashbacks, I found myself in an Uber in the middle of the woods. With the local bee cops acting as my guided tour, I sat and thought about what I was going to have for dinner. And after our 5-star trip, we arrived at what seemed to be the house of Jason Voorhees. And for trespassing, the owner tried to decapitate me. And after a swift roundhouse, it was made apparent that all the locals were fucking nuts. So I dodged these guys the same way I do the TV license fee, and arrived at the village square. And after a bit of sightseeing, it was clear that I wasn't welcome.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
And I got instantly violated. So on my second attempt, I tried to sneak around. She might not have seen me. She could be blind or short-sighted. Oh, no, she's pointing at me. So for the next 5 minutes, which seemed like an eternity, I was running around like a headless chicken. And after a few narrow escapes, the church bell rang out.
Huh? Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Bazinga!
And then in the fishing village, I was hit with a trifecta of pain.
Keep coming.
A short while later, we found a Spaniard tied up in a basement. And then a very large man injected me with his love juice. After successfully contracting AIDS, it was time to escape. And then I bumped into some shady guy who asked me to meet him around the back of the bike sheds. And then we arrived at Dynamite Valley, and this area seemed a lot more busy than I remember. And shortly after, this guy decided to put his fingers in my head, like I was a bowling ball. And then his wife did the same thing. But after a couple of non-consensual fingerings, it was time to mop up the area and move on. And then we arrived at the village chief's house. And he wasn't happy with me ransacking his place. So after a kick like the great King Leonidas, the big boy informed me that the STD he'd given me was spreading. So he left me to my own devices. Back in the village square, I got to play with some cute puppies. And then we arrived at the church where they was holding the president's daughter. And with no way in, we had to go and search for the key. Which led me to my first boss fight. And after some questionable throwing skills, we put the big boy down. And then it was Leon's time of the month. And we had a nice long nap.
A few moments later.
And after we woke up from our beauty sleep, we did some further exploring in our little boat. And then it was time for boss fight number 2. And whilst fighting the big ugly beast, I remembered I forgot to save the dog that was in the original game.
He was special.
Anyway, after putting down this big lump of turd, it was back to the church to save Ashley. And with the package secured, we were soon ambushed. And I thought it'd be smart to try and sneak past these enemies. And eventually, I was successful, and we met up with Luis. And for the next 30 minutes during the siege, I just got killed non-stop. And then thankfully, Ashley saved us from this torture. Then Luis said that he could help us with our STD problem. And then Big Daddy was back. And so we made our escape, or at least we thought. And it was time for boss fight number 3. And to be honest, the fight with Mendez was pretty easy. With his predictable moveset, we finished him pretty quickly. And shortly after, we arrived at the infamous castle. But before we go any further, there is almost 98% of people not subscribed to the channel who watch the videos. Now, I'm no mathematician, but that's pretty shit. So if you enjoy this video or any of my other content, you know what to do. And so, we made our way into the castle, got greeted by a medieval welcome party, and fought our way through. Once inside, we met a little munchkin, who basically waffled for like 5 minutes. So we dealt with the welcome committee, and ended up in the midget sex dungeon. And I remembered that these guys were sensitive to sound, and I'm somewhat of a stealth expert.
On a scale from 1 to 10, my friend, you're fucked.
Gotcha. And then I arrived in one of the worst possible rooms that I remember from the original game. This wasn't no ordinary room. No. This room was a hall of fuckery, filled to the brim with enemies, and actually being kidnapped every 3 seconds. But I managed to boss it on the first try.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
And then, like any good woman, Ashley tried to murder me. So she ran away, and I was alone again. Yeah, fuck her. Moving on. Oh, for fuck's sake. That was short-lived. So next up on the adventure was this little maze of horrors. And after making it out, it was non-stop trouble from here on out. And then it was time to play as Ashley, but... boring! So back to Leon it was, and he had a bit of a bug problem on his hands. And after dealing with the pests, well, I found myself in a sticky situation. I was about to enter the 7th circle of hell, and the problem being, I had no way to heal my health. Oh god, I forgot about this room. I think we're cooked here. I've literally got no heals. This is the last one. Lord have mercy.
Oh, thank God for that.
Shortly after, Ashley was being gangbanged, and I got pushed in a well. So I trudged through the piss and shit, and came face to face with a formidable foe. Now instead of waiting for the elevator, like a smart person would do, I decided to face this bastard head on. And after several minutes, and several nitrogen tanks later, it was game over for the oversized slug. And I was reunited with my best bud.
In that case, we know what we have to do.
So me and Luis battled the way through the mines. Fought 2 giant ogres together, and rode the roller coaster. And then sadly,
Luis! Long time no see, rookie.
our former commander-in-chief stabbed him in the back. And then it was like having a confrontation on the streets of London. After getting my ass kicked, it was time to move on. And then we had to fight the Munchkin from earlier. He was now juiced up and ready for a fight, So I obliged. One dead midget later, it was time to go and save Ashley. Rekindle with my one true love, but decided to do some DIY. And we took an elevator together and reflected on everything that had happened. And then Emperor Palpatine used his Jedi powers on us. And Ashley's gone once again. And then I was finally reunited with Krauser. And after another stabby battle, it was time to put him down for good. And my hard work had finally paid off, because now I had the chopper gunner kill streak. And boy, was it great. And after fighting my way through the next area, my kill streak had ended. Palpatine had pushed my buttons one final time. So it was time to get rid of the STD that had been plaguing us, have a little cuddle, and finally face Lord Sadler head on. With just a bald-headed freak left to take care of, it was time to get down to business. And of course, in good old Resident Evil fashion, when in doubt, just shoot the big bulging eyes. A few eyeball pops later, and the job was done. Well, in an RPG.
I'll give you a holy body.
And all that remained was a short jet ski ride into the sunset. And our mission was complete. Resident Evil Remake on hardcore, done. The original game was great. The remake, it's just perfect. Jesus Christ. Not like my results though. Maybe we'll have to do it again.